Hello, today's topic is practicality. This is one of the key concepts and considerations that people need to be on top of when it comes to testing and assessment. So in today's talk, you will understand how to ensure that a test is practical. Now you might be wondering, why does this matter? Why does it matter? Well, think about this. Here's a test in China. There's a test every year called the College English Test. It started about 26 years ago, and roughly 18 million people take it every year. 18 million people. Now this is a very high stakes test. You find lots of opportunities or lots of occasions when people decide to cheat. And I love this example here. Here you have someone who's put a hidden camera in their spectacles, and they've got a coin with a tiny receiver in it. So someone outside the exam room can see the exam paper and tell them what to write. Now, I think that's just a fantastic example of ingenuity, and it makes the point this is a very high stakes test. But it's a test for 18 million people. And therefore, how you run a test for that many students is an issue of practicality. So this is one reason why practicality is important if you have large numbers of students taking a test. So let's think about some of the key considerations that we need to think of when it comes to practicality. The first one is to think about the cost of administering and marking the test. The second one is about the time for administering and taking the test. So for example, you might think with the CET in China, wouldn't it be fantastic to give every student a 5-minute oral test? But of course, if you start to think 5 minutes times 18 million, I don't know what that is, but it's a lot. So it's not practical, it's not possible. So time becomes an issue in determining what you can and cannot do. Third consideration is this one, the time available for marking. When we think of the CET in China, clearly this is a big question. How do you mark 18 million test papers in a practical fashion? This is why the test is computer markable, machine markable. It makes it much, much faster and more possible to do. But this sort of practicality concern is not just when you have large numbers of students. It can be, for example, when you're running placement assessment. Now we've talked about placement assessment on another talk, but one reason why it's important here is that often the placement assessment takes place just before the course starts. So it has to be marked very quickly so that you can get the results and put the students in the right course. Okay, a fourth consideration is this one, the number of people for administering and marking. Again, you might think with the CET, 18 million students, you could have it all marked by human markers, but I don't know how many hundreds of thousands you would need, but clearly it's not practical. Another reason for machine marking of those test papers. Now these four have all really been about budget and capacity issues. But there's one other practicality consideration which is very important and perhaps the most important, and that is how easy is it to interpret the results when you get them? Because if you don't know what the results mean, was it worth giving the test in the first place? So now let's look at a couple of examples of test types that are very practical. Okay. The first one is multi-choice questions. Now, in another session, we've talked about multi-choice questions, and you can see immediately why these are very practical. The answers are there. You choose the letter, everyone has the answers. Very quick, very easy to mark. Another example that we've looked at before when we talked about diagnostic assessment is the vocab levels test. Again, this is a very practical test. One thing, of course, to bear in mind with both these tests is that they do take a lot of time to develop. But once you've got them developed, they meet that practicality consideration. However, practicality is not everything. There are other considerations that we have to bear in mind. And these considerations we've talked about elsewhere. We've talked about the issue of reliability and also of validity. So sometimes it's necessary to make a compromise between practicality and reliability, validity. It's more important to have a test that's reliable and valid than to have one that is totally practical. And this is a decision all test makers have to make. Okay, thank you very much. That's enough for today. See you again.